So how did I bench 140 kilograms as a rugby player? Now, my name's Hassan. I make videos on YouTube to help rugby players improve in their skill set and their ability, and hopefully allow them to reach a higher level of rugby. So today we're going to be looking at bench press, as in the movement, and how rugby players can, effectively alter their technique to get stronger at the movement, but also make sure that it's benefiting their game. And yeah, I've got a bunch of pointers written down on my piece of paper today that I'm going to share with you guys. I've got a few different pointers just to make you kind of aware of the movement and maybe give you some insight that you weren't aware of before. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll be able to head into the gym and bench more weight and generally just get stronger and become a stronger, more athletic rugby player. So with that being said, if this video is something that interests you and you find it useful, please leave a like on the video and be sure to subscribe to the channel as well so you're notified when I upload. And yeah, let's get into the video. So the first thing I want to talk about in terms of the bench press movement is the technique. Now, probably the most common, I'd say, issue that I see with a lot of rugby players when they bench is the fact that they're not setting up in the right format. So if we look at the shoulders, a lot of rugby players bench very similar to how bodybuilders bench, with a flat back, and they're not really putting their shoulders in the safest position possible. And as we know in rugby, shoulders are extremely important. Whether you're making tackles, you're lifting in the line outs, your shoulders have a very crucial role no matter where you're playing on the pitch. And we want to protect our shoulders as much as we can because they play such a vital role when we're on the pitch. Now, as I mentioned before, we don't want to be looking to bench like a bodybuilder with our back completely flat on the bench. Instead, we're going to look to arch our back and we're going to look to dig our shoulder blades into the bench. But what we want to make sure that we're doing is we're really retracting our shoulders like this so we can feel that our shoulder blades are touching together. And this way, we're going to allow our shoulders to be in a much more safer position when we look to press weight on the bench. Now, if you're able to set up like this, it's going to make sure that your shoulders are in a safer position and it's going to keep them healthy. I know a lot of people kind of associate arching your back on the bench as cheating, but it really isn't. It's only there to put your shoulders in a safe position, and although it may decrease the range of movement slightly because obviously the bar has less space to travel, it's not going to ultimately affect your strength in any way, and it's just going to make you more effective at the movement. And then the next thing I want to talk about is that we need to make sure that we're not doing really high volume sets. Now, what do I mean by this? The rugby players who I see doing really high volume sets, I'm talking like sets of 8 to 10 reps for multiple sets, I would say that they're more so not training for strength, they're training for hypertrophy, and this isn't what we want to be doing as a rugby athlete. We want to be prioritizing our strength and training for it. So in order to get a bigger, stronger bench press, it's really important that we're putting a lot of emphasis on training and building up our central nervous system, also known as the CNS. Now, the CNS needs to be exposed to higher intensities and higher loads of weight in order to get used to it and be comfortable under higher loads for you to be able to press more weight. Now, I would personally recommend to any rugby player watching this video that they need to emphasize on doing a lower amount of reps but increasing the weight slightly so that you have experience handling these higher weights, and it also makes sure that you're going to be consistently testing your technique as well, because at the end of the day, I feel like the bench press is more of a skill rather than an exercise. The more you do the bench press and the more you practice it, the more efficient you're going to be and the better you're going to get at it, because in my opinion, it's a skill. Now, I'll give you some examples of kind of sets that you can implement into your next bench workout that you can kind of, use as a template. So I would recommend doing a format something like this. You can do 5 sets of 3, 5 sets of 5, or 3 sets of 5, depending on how heavy you want to load the barbell. Now, this is going to be different for different people, and a different amount of volume is going to work for different people. So I definitely recommend trying all these out and seeing which one your body responds to the best. But somewhere within this these figures is where most people are going to find the most effective when it comes to bench pressing. And then the next thing I want to talk about is your triceps. Now we all know that bench press is meant to work the chest, and it does, in the sense of, you know, when you bring the barbell down to your chest and that initial movement of pressing it off your chest is going to be the most engaged muscle for that portion of the lift. But when you get to the point of locking out your elbows and, you know, trying to fully lock out the bar, your triceps are going to be doing most of the work. Now, once you recognize this, that's a great starting point, but we've got to remember that the triceps also play a role in the bench press, not just the chest. So we need to make sure that we're training our triceps just as much as we're training our chest in order to grow our bench press. So what I would recommend doing is, alongside your standard bench press, doing some variations. For me, I like to do a lot of close grip work, not essentially where my hands are, you know, almost touching, but, you know, a narrower grip than what I normally do. And this ensures that the triceps are doing a lot more of the work compared to my chest, and it allows them to get stronger whilst also doing the bench press movement. So in a sense, we're getting the best of both two worlds. And then alongside that, I'd recommend doing some you know, relatively intense accessory movements. So for me personally, I love to do the tricep push downs. I think I personally respond really well to them, and I know for some people that may not be the case, so I would recommend maybe looking at doing a different movement. So yeah, if the tricep push down isn't to your liking, I could also recommend doing a different tricep movement. For example, the tricep dip. That's really good for, you know, putting a lot of emphasis on your triceps and allowing them to grow and get stronger. And the good thing with that movement as well is you can wear on a weighted dip belt, and, you know, you can progressively overload that movement over time, which is going to allow you to get stronger, and that is ultimately what we want. Another thing I want to say as well is I think the triceps are quite underlooked in terms of a muscle group that we use in rugby. I think it is quite an important muscle group. So if we look at the bench press, you know, imagine this is me benching. When I've gone all the way down and then I'm looking to lock out the bar, that movement there where I'm locking my elbows out is very similar to a handoff in rugby. So there is a correlation there between those two movements, and I think that's why it's very important to make sure that you've got strong triceps, because it correlates really well to things you might be doing on the pitch. And then another thing just to take note of as well is that if you watch these videos on social media of the, you know, the pro players bench pressing, a lot of them tend to favor a closer grip, and I think it's just because, you know, the triceps are such an important group for rugby players in general in terms of muscles. So I think that just really backs up the point of why it's important to train your triceps. And then the next thing, and probably the most important thing that I want to talk about in terms of the bench press and how to get stronger, is just making sure that you have balance. Now, what do I mean by balance? It's all good and well, you know, training your chest and your triceps and having a really big bench press, but despite having a really big bench press, if you don't know how to, you know, utilize that strength in the right way on the rugby field, it's going to be pointless. So I think you really need to make sure that the strength that you're building in the gym is serving a useful purpose on the pitch. And to be honest, I think in order for it to be useful, you got to be able to complement your upper body strength with, you know, a really good solid foundation in terms of your core strength and also your legs. You know, your legs are your base, so you need to have strong legs no matter what position you play on the pitch, in my opinion. And then you need to make sure that depending on the position you play, I'd say making sure you have good core strength. But then, you know, for me, for example, I'm a prop, so it's quite important to have like good neck strength, for example. There is a very important emphasis on just making sure that you have a good overall well-balanced physique in terms of your strength, because if it's mismatched and unbalanced, then it's not going to serve you the most benefit on the field. So in order to, you know, keep the balance between, you know, having a strong chest and having a strong bench press and all the other movements, I just want to really make sure and emphasize with you guys, and as you know, come to the end of this video, just make sure that not only are you emphasizing putting in a lot of effort with your strength working in the gym, but make sure that you're also topping up your fitness, making sure you're getting out there doing cardio, doing runs, doing fitness top-ups to make sure, you know, you're still staying athletic, but then also making sure that you're doing your mobility work as well. Staying nice and strong and flexible is really important, because you want to make sure that you're looking after all those muscle groups and making sure that you can prevent injury as much as possible. So yeah, just making sure that you're putting in the effort required in the gym, but you're also doing the work outside the gym to make sure that you're the best possible athlete for when you step onto the rugby field. And with that being said, guys, those are all the rugby bench tips that I have for you today. I hope you found something useful, and you can take away some of the pointers from this video into your next gym session. Hopefully you'll be able to get much stronger, and you'll also become a better athlete on the rugby field. So if you found this video useful, be sure to leave it a like, and please do subscribe to the channel if you want to be notified when I upload next. So yeah, I just want to give you one more thank you for watching all the way to the end of this video, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you.